Okay, today is Friday, July 14th, 2017, and we are interviewing Gary Hall in Springfield, Illinois. Mr. Hall is 68 years old, having been born on February 18th, 1949. My name is Joanne Jennings, and I'll be your interviewer. Jill Layton will be the court reporter for this interview.
Okay.
Mr. Hall, would you please state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in?
I'm glad you said a war. Because,
It was.
well, when I came back, I was told it was a police action.
Police
And
action.
to me, when somebody's shooting at other people, that's a war.
Mhm.
It was Vietnam.
Vietnam.
And you know, those people in Korea, it was a police action there too. They've never,
Mhm.
they've never declared that a war. But yes, it was a police action, and it was not a very popular police action. Come back and people spitting on you. And
What branch of service were you in?
I was in the Army. I was drafted.
You were drafted, okay.
Having a good job at Caterpillar, and they said, well, no, we want you to come with us.
How old were you?
19.
19 years old. Working at Caterpillar, and what did you think when you received your notice?
I thought that sure messing up my partying life.
Your party in life.
April 16th, 1968 is when I went in, or when I got drafted, Pekin, Illinois. And the reason I remember this date was my dad told me, he said, son, he said, you're going to remember this for a long time.
Mhm.
I said, yeah, all right. He says, no, he says, you forgot. This is the day your mother and I got married.
Mhm.
So I went, okay, that's cool.
I am going to back up just a little bit. If you could tell me, like, where were you born? Where are you from?
I was born between Sparta and Springfield, Missouri.
Okay.
My birth certificate said Springfield, Missouri. So I gotta say Springfield, Missouri, but it was a little, the doctor had his office and his house, and that was a location.
Mhm.
I remember my dad, when we were talking about it one time, you know, son, he says, I went through 2 pots of coffee waiting for you to show up. I looked over at my mother and I says, well, how was it for you, Mom? Was it that bad? She says, it was a lot worse.
A lot worse.
You know.
Yep.
I said, oh, okay.
Was your, did you have any other family members in the military, siblings or
Yes,
parents?
well, I had 2 brothers, and I've got 4 sisters. My brother Howard, he went in the Navy, and a few years ago he died from smoke inhalation. It was a fire in the house. I'll have a drink of water. He didn't make it, but they did.
His family? Mhm.
I guess just because he was too damn stubborn to give up on him.
Mhm.
See, there you got me.
He's a hero.
yeah. But he was in the Navy,
Mhm.
and I always kind of, you know, he got, you know, in Illinois, if you was in Vietnam, you got, it was 50 or $100, something like that.
Mhm.
So I got my money, and he got his. He sat off the coast of Vietnam in one of those, an aircraft carrier, working on helicopters and stuff.
Mhm.
Never even put a pinky on Vietnam soil, but he was just as much of a veteran as I was
Exactly.
of Vietnam.
Vietnam veteran, okay. So 2 of you were serving at the same time, huh?
Well, no,
No, different.
he went in after, he's 3 years younger than I am. His birthday is February the 19th, mine's February the 18th. 3 years difference.
Mhm.
He, when Mom would it'd be our birthdays, she'd ask what kind of cake we wanted. And all of a sudden he was about maybe 6, 7 years old. And he says, "Hey, Mom," he says, "I don't want cake for my birthday. I want pie." I said, "Well, I want cake." And my mom figured out real quick that he saw what was going on, and decided that she started making him pie. And you know that his favorite pie was blueberry pie, and she would get him a blueberry pie on February the 19th up until he died. But she'd always forget to get me a cake or something. She'd send me a happy birthday card, but she always made sure to make him a pie.
He was a baby, maybe?
Well, she just thought, boy, that kid's smart.
Yeah. What years did you serve?
I was there.
In Vietnam?
I was in Vietnam from. Oh shoot! Let's see. I went in April 16th, 1968. I went down to St. Louis, got my physical, and right from there we went to Fort Leonard Wood. They gave us these tests, and when I came back, the sergeant had about a dozen of us come out. We marched back to where we'd taken the test, and we sat down, and we started going in this interview room, this corporal. And this corporal told me, he started telling me about how smart I was, how great I did on the test. Well, you know, I'd been to the carnival. When somebody starts bragging about you, you start looking around behind you and you think, uh-oh. No, nobody brags about, you know. I says, oh, okay. I says, so what's your plan here? He said, well, we'd like to put you in for officers candidate school. Oh, wow, let's see. I says, that's about 11, 12 months. I got 2 years. Shoot, I could probably never go anywhere but right here in the States. Because I had an uncle during World War II. My mom's brothers, one of them was in the Marines, one of them was in the Navy, and one of them was in the Air Force. The one that was in the Air Force, Uncle Donald, he wrote home and he said, Mom, he says, they keep telling me how smart I am. They want to send me to these schools. So he'd go to school, and just about the time he's going to graduate, he wouldn't do so good. And they moved him to another school. So he never went anywhere, but he spent most of his time in California. The other one, he was on Iwo Jima. And you know what? Uncle Earl, he told me, he says, this is why when he came back, he had what would be called PTSD right now. My grandmother was yelling at him because he wasn't killing them chickens fast enough with the axe. So he took the axe to her, or went after her with it, you know. So, but that was okay. And he's in the. They put him in the booby hatch or whatever. And when I was and he was in there when I got older. My dad would go visit him every chance he got. Really a nice guy. And I told him, I said, so you was on Iwo Jima, huh? I says, yeah. I says, being a smart eye, I says, well, how come I didn't see you in any of those raising them flags? He said, I'm going to tell you something. Those fellas that they took a picture of raising that flag up, they weren't the first ones. They picked out a person of each ethnic area or people so they could have them for poster childs and take them around and sell bonds. He says those guys, well, they were good Marines, but they weren't the first ones to put the flag up there. So, but he ended up getting out of there and did real well in life. And then my brother, or not my brother, my uncle Pete, he was a cook in the Navy. I can remember we visited him. Aunt Bertha would say, oh, Pete, you're not going to cook again, are you? Cooks in the Navy and the Army too. They just mess up all kinds of stuff. But we're getting off the subject. We're supposed to be talking about
No,
me.
that's fine. I was looking, you said, okay, so you served from 68 until when?
November of 69.
Okay.
I spent 18 months and 2 days, or 19 months and 2 days.
How long was basic training?
Well, that's the thing, see. He said,
So they said you were smart.
yeah, he said it was smart. And when I went to sign that piece of paper, said I was going to be in there for 3 years. I said, whoa, wait a minute now. See, because that's another thing my dad always told me. He says, I don't care how long it takes. Somebody wants you to sign a piece of paper with your name on it, you better read every bit of it. If you don't understand it, you better ask twice.
Mhm.
So I says, he said, yeah, he says, you'll be going in for 3 instead of unwilling service to a registered army. Excuse me. And I said, well, wait a minute. He just done spent about 10 minutes telling me how smart I am. What means I'd be dumb enough to sign this? He goes, okay, all right. He says, you don't have to. He says, how about leadership school? I says, what's that? Well, he says, we're picking out a few guys and we're going to send them to leadership school. It'll be basic training, everything you need to know in 1 week. So you learn all of it. And he says, then they put you in as an acting sergeant. And you're there to help everybody else with the problems they got with learning different things
Mhm.
about being in the Army. So I says, sure, I'll do that. Kind of wish I hadn't have done that because I went from going with a bunch of guys I knew to having a bunch of guys from Chicago who right off didn't like me because I had sergeant stripes on.
Mhm.
But after a while, they got to where they just had to like me.
Yeah. So
All right.
for basic training?
It was
then-
Fort Leonard Wood.
Uh-huh.
Was there for the 8 weeks.
8 weeks, okay.
I got to tell you this story.
All right.
I had the 4th platoon, and they had this, you ever hear the infiltration course, where they run you have to go through the barbed wire and crawl and all that stuff.
Okay.
Well, that day they took us out and they showed us where the barbed wire was, and walked us through it. Place where you're gonna trenches. They were dry when we looked the first time. That night they had water in them.
Mhm.
So we go back and we're going to go that night. And this corporal, and we're all kind of, we're worried about it because we know there's going to be gunfire and everything. Corporal told us, he says, I'm 6 foot tall. I'm going to be one of the guys standing back there with a target. The guy with a machine gun, that's going to be, so those bullets are going to be 10 foot above your head. They're not going to shoot you. He says those explosions, they'll be close, but they won't be as close as you think they are. Okay. So we're talking, and they told us, he says, the first ones back get to ride back in the trucks. Everybody else has to walk back. So I told these guys from Chicago, I says, hey, you know what I'm going to do? Every chance I get, I'm going to get up and I'm going to run. I ain't going to crawl. When that gunfire is going off, it's going to be above I said, I'm only 5'9.5". I says, it's going to be above my head. I'm going to run. I'm going to be down. I'm going to run. Anybody with me? Well, sure. Now, we did have to crawl underneath the barbed wire. We had to go through little bit of mud and everything like that. Things blowing up. But every chance we got, we took off running. We beat we were the first ones back, our whole platoon.
Mhm.
Now, did they know what we were doing? I think so. They could see us running out there, but we beat them back, and we got to ride back in the trucks.
So you were smart. And then after basic, is that when you?
After basic, they put me in for, since I'd worked at a grocery store
Mhm.
when I was in high school, and I worked at Caterpillar putting parts on the line, they decided I would go to supply school. So they sent me to supply school in Fort Lee, Virginia. And that's where I went. I flew to Fort Lee, Virginia with some other people that went to supply school too. And in Fort Lee, Virginia, that's where they train everybody for supply. They still do, in fact. I checked with one of these people out here. They right across from you, that young gal, she said that's where they have supply schools still for everybody, for the Navy, for the Air Force, the Marines. Everybody learns supply in Fort Lee, Virginia. So went there for supply school, and when I graduated from it, if you did good in the courses, everything like that, you went as a specialist. You graduated as specialist 4. That was a pretty good deal because usually when you got out of AIT, you go in as an E1 when you're in the military. Then it's E2, which would be like a corporal. Well, most or an E2 would be a specialist 4. There's hard stripers, corporal, specialist they have that little bird thing on there. But because of them needing a lot of people in specialized courses and the training, they decided to make us specialist 4 because they needed us over there.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing about it, they need a lot of people in the military to shoot weapons and blow this up and blow that up, but they need a heck of a lot more people in supply.
Support. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Remember that guy by the name of Napoleon?
Yeah.
You know why he lost the war?
He didn't have any support. No supplies.
The Russians froze him out. They cut off his supply lines where they didn't have any food, and the horses died, the men died from starvation, and they barely made it back to France because of supply.
So after Fort Lee, then you were sent to Vietnam?
I went home. My mom and dad brought me my car, and I drove back in my car to back home, and then I was home for about 4 to 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went from there to California. Then from California, they sent us to Vietnam. We went to Alaska, Japan, Osaka, Japan, and then to Saigon, Vietnam. And you know what? You probably heard this, but I want to say it anyway. You know, when a plane comes in and they let the air from outside into the cabin,
Mm-hmm.
that day they were burning shit.
Oh.
You know, with the 55-gallon drums. I still don't understand why we couldn't leave our stuff there. We couldn't leave our bodies there, and we couldn't leave any of our feces, as they called it. But that smell from it being burnt,
Mm-hmm.
I says, man, I don't know if I can handle this country or not. But when I got out and I found out what it was,
Yeah.
okay. And to me, Vietnam kind of reminded me where we were at in in Saigon.
Uh-huh.
Saigon, it was more like a lot of jungle and stuff on the outskirts of it and everything. But I went from there to Cam Ranh Bay. I went from regular supply. They put me in medical supply. Like they say, you hump one box, you hump another. You know, it's one supply. One supply is another supply. You know, so I went there, Cam Ranh Bay, and because I had a 32nd Medical Depot, the 32nd was out of Fort Sam Houston, Texas. If anybody got any medical supplies, the Australians, the Koreans, the Turks, the VC, everybody got supplies. If you got a bandage or a pill or something, it was from 32nd Medical. That was our base platoon in Cam Ranh Bay. Later on, they sent me up to Quin Yon, which is the 2nd platoon. But while I was in Cam Ranh Bay, in 1968,
Mm-hmm.
a guy by the name of Bob Hope and Ann Margaret, the Gold Diggers,
Yeah.
That was the first time, probably the only time, that he had a night show in Vietnam. I got to meet Anne Margaret and the Gold Diggers. Oh yeah, and Bob Hope too. He was all right, but
He was all
Anne
right
Margaret,
with Anne Margaret, huh?
Anne Margaret, you know, she is. I helped a guy when he showed up before the thing and said that he needed some help. The Air Force guy needed some help with his plane that was coming in. And I told him, I says, me and my buddies, I said, well, we don't want to miss a Bob Hope show. He says, I guarantee you won't miss it.
Mhm.
So we went and helped him out with her 5-ton. And there he was, Bob Hope. But Anne Margaret, I mean, she just like talking to you or anybody. Now, them Gold Diggers, they acted like they was God's gift to man, you know, like, well. But Anne Margaret, she just really a nice lady to talk to.
Very friendly, yeah.
Very friendly, just like somebody you went to high school with,
Mhm.
or next door girl, you know.
Mhm.
But then after that, there was the Tet Offensive of '68, and then they had some problems with. We got through that, but right after that, the what's that called? Black Panthers. Black Panthers had a bunch of them had voluntarily joined
Mhm.
the military,
Mhm.
and their plan. These guys weren't too smart. Their plan was they were going to get over in Vietnam, and they was going to take over a certain town or whatever, and they was going to set up their own little kingdom, I guess. Well, you know what happens if you decided to do an insurrection against the military? It ain't like, say, in Springfield, Illinois, or Peoria, Illinois, where the cops say, halt, we're going to arrest you.
Mhm.
Then they shoot back and you shoot back. The military police said, halt. And if you even acted like you was going to raise your gun up, you got shot. And after they got arrested, and then the ones that didn't get shot, they arrested them and they put them in Long Bend jail. So it lasted about, what's the term now? About a minute.
Yeah.
And it lasted maybe 3 days, where they were just, for a while, they had control of Cameron Bay.
How many were in this group?
Oh, I think there was maybe 20 or 30.
Mhm.
There was that many, but most of them got shot. They were stupid enough to think that they could outgun the military. Come on now. But that was something they didn't put that on the news.
No.
Yeah. But after that, they decided that, and there were some new people come into Cameron Bay. They sent myself and two of the black guys I was with in Cameron Bay.
Mhm.
They sent us to Quinyon, and they put me in charge of the receiving area. Gave me a couple of Vietnamese to work with me,
Mhm.
and this Korean liaison. I'm gonna tell you what, that Korean liaison, Kim Chung Ho. He was the funniest guy. When he spoke English, he spoke it just like it was in the book, you know. And I'd say something, you know. I was raised up in Creve-Coeur, you know, hillbilly by nature. And I'd say stuff, and he'd get his book out trying to figure out what I said. No. It took me about, now this is how smart he was. It took me about a week, and he was talking like he was born in Creve-Coeur, Illinois, which got him, and he had the attitude I had too, which got him in trouble because when his the captain showed up with the sergeant and a couple other guys to get their supplies, he was supposed to, you know, he's talking to him.
Mhm.
And they didn't get all the supplies they were supposed to. And it was because it didn't come in. He said something, and still don't know what he said, but it made the captain mad, and the sergeant just hauled off and hit him. just smacked him. Well, I went up to that sergeant and I smacked him, knocked him down. He come back with his pistol and he was going to shoot me. And the captain stopped me and some of the other guys seen what was going on. And Kim goes, oh, no, no, no. So we got it all taken care of. After that, Kim realized he couldn't talk to his, I was a bad influence on him.
You were a bad influence.
Almost got him and I both killed because of it. But he was my roommate for a while. And
What kind of accommodations did you have?
we had barracks and we had because we was supply, but we had the combat engineers. They were with us too in the same area, and we had a hospital, and these guys that was in the, they activated this one unit of doctors and almost doctors, of reservists,
Mm-hmm.
They activated them and they only had like 11 months left to their reserve obligation.
Mm-hmm.
So they activated the whole unit, and so they were there for 11 months. After 11 months, and they got to go back to the States, and most of them didn't re-up, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But they were there to take care of us if we had any problems. But their main purpose was when they get Vietnamese, BC, they were like had shrapnel or something, they'd been shot.
Mm-hmm.
They'd bring them in with these helicopters and take them in and work on them, fix them up, then they'd put them in the POW camp.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the helicopters. You got used to the helicopters landing out not too far from your barracks. Believe it or not, we had TV, and I bought a TV. It was in black and white, of course, and we would watch the Smothers Brothers and different shows that the military let us watch. It had to be shows that like the Smothers Brothers on their Laughing Show and the Laughing Show.
Mm-hmm.
They canceled both those out because they said something derogatory about the war in Vietnam. I guess, I don't know. We never got to see that show because they screened what we got to watch, of course.
Where did the signal come from for that? I mean, it was not tapes, right? I mean,
Right.
you're talking.
Well, they'd Saigon. They broadcast from Saigon.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever hear of? You ever watch Good Morning Vietnam?
Yes.
Adrian Cronauer? He was a real guy. Good Morning Vietnam.
Did you ever meet him?
No, he'd already left by the time, but they had him recorded,
Mm-hmm.
and every morning I'd turn on that radio and listen to him wake me up.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Vietnam. I could do it longer, but I don't want to waste your tape.
You're fine.
But we would trying to think of something else to talk about.
The barracks you stayed in and the hospital and everything you talk about, were these buildings already there?
Yeah, they'd built them there. We had our own EM club, and we shared it with the combat engineers.
What'd you call it? EM?
Enlisted Men's Club.
Okay.
Yeah. What the heck? You're adults. The supply sergeant that was there, he'd been in Vietnam for I think probably since he'd been there at least a year longer than I had, maybe 2. He kept extending over there. He'd married a Vietnamese,
Mm-hmm.
and he was in business with this woman who had a house of ill repute.
Mm-hmm.
And it was our, they would, had women there would give men pleasure. Trying to say it as politically correct as I can. But anyway, we had one time we had an IG inspection, and it was my job to go to the airport and pick these guys up. But this sergeant told me, he says, what you're going to do is you're going to stop by, what was her name? Can't think of her name now, but anyway, her house, and that's where you're going to drop these guys off. I says, okay. Do I get to stay there too? No, you got to pick them up and then come back and get them in the morning. Okay. So we left them there. The next day, we passed the inspection. They didn't look at anything. We passed the inspection. But yeah, just stuff like that went on. I mean, we had big rough terrain fork trucks that move stuff around. You know what a connex is?
No.
Well, you know the big ships they have nowadays, and these big metal containers?
Okay.
365 cubes, I think is what they were. That's where we got most of our stuff in, because they'd ship it to us on ships, not nearly as big, not nearly loaded down as much what they do now, and they weren't computerized or anything. And we'd bring them in, and we'd use those for our. We set up a little storage area, and we'd store all our supplies in one area, and another area we had set up for, say, first platoon or first. Let's see. Forgot now. Airborne air cav, first air cav, it would be on there, and then when the supplies come in, and we get orders, we'd just fill them up. We'd fill the supplies. So when they come to get their stuff, they just go to that certain connex. And then, but we had others with they were marked A through. I think we went all the way to X, with all these different supplies. Had them all organized and stuff. Stuff I'd learned when I was Fort Lee.
And these were all medical supplies, right?
All medical supplies, every bit of it. If you ampicillin, if you're allergic to penicillin, you could use ampicillin. All these different medical supplies.
Were the American soldiers brought there to that hospital and treated?
Yeah, if you, they weren't.
I mean, combat or no, or was it just if
No,
they were sick, maybe?
I didn't see any combat guys brought there. It was mostly what they brought there was Vietnamese that were going to go to POW. But we were brought there too. Like if you had a cold or something happened, you had an accident, you went there.
Did you have any interaction with the Vietnamese that were brought there that would be?
Oh, I had interaction with the two Vietnamese I work with.
The ones that were injured and brought there? I mean.
No, not those guys, because they were prisoners. They'd bring them back and operate on them, and then they'd put them in the prisoner camp. And then after a while, this is what got me. After a little while, then they turn them loose. We turned them loose, and we were supposed to get some of our guys back. Very rarely would they send any of our guys back, but we just kept turning some of their guys loose, and then they'd come back the next. You'd see them coming back, go back to war. That always amazed me how stupid we were, because we let them loose. Say, well, just go on back there and don't you do any war with us anymore. Next thing you know, boom. Oh, I got to tell this story. I forgot about this. When I was in Cameron Bay, I'd been there about maybe a month, and we had a Vietnamese guy there who would give everybody haircuts and shaves. And you got to realize I was 19 years old, And I could shave, but to have somebody professionally shave you, I mean, just as your skin just feel just as like a baby's butt, you know? So I got him to, I paid him, I think it was 50 cents for a shave and a haircut. And it was great. Did that 2 different times. And then we had some kind of a thing happen that night. Bunch of shooting going into our supply depot, and Cameron Bay was getting hit a little bit. And it was all over with. The next day, they'd caught some of the VC in their black pajamas. And one of the guys that they caught was the guy that was giving me a shave. I'm gonna and what he'd done was he just walked around and he knew exactly where to target stuff inside our unit. And the other, we weren't the only supply unit there, but the other supply units and stuff, he knew exactly where to send those missiles in. So
He was telling them where to send the missiles?
yeah, him and the other guys. In fact, he probably shot a few in. I mean, they knew exactly how many feet by walking it off and stuff. So after that, the only person that ever shaved me and still is me. I don't put any blade, nobody puts a blade to my throat except me. Yeah, I forgot about that for a little bit. And then there was, when I was in Quinyon, we were on our way to get some supplies. We were going to the air base to get the oxygen tanks filled up, and we were got caught in the square in Quinyon, and that is when they'd had a few problems with people, VC coming in and stuff, and they caught a bunch of VC. They're going to make examples of them. Of course, supposedly one of them was a relative of Ho Chi Minh. I think just about everybody in Vietnam was a relative of Ho Chi Minh. So while we're there, we were at the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time. We got stopped there and we couldn't move. We had to wait. And they hung these 3 guys. And, you watch it on the movies and stuff like that, the cowboy movies and stuff like that. It ain't the same thing when you really see somebody jerking around and stuff. In fact, for a long time, I couldn't even think about wearing anything around my throat. So, and then when somebody went up to try and get them down, they shot them. So when everything was cleared up enough, they let us go on to whatever. We were on our way to get the tanks filled up, finish up our project, go up the air base, and come back. But we did a lot of work. We did a lot of partying, had a lot of fun. I ran into a guy. It's been about a year ago. I was on some kind of a bus trip, and he saw I had my Vietnam veterans hat on. He goes, "Oh, you're in Vietnam?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I went back there. You can go back there if you want to." He says, "They have tours. They'll take you around and show you stuff." Did you ever think about going back there? And I thought about it. I said, I don't think I left anything back there that I want to go back and get. I'm not interested in going back there at all. Just went to like in Quinyon, we was me and Kim. He told me, he says he wanted to go to. They had movie theaters there. He wanted to go to this movie. This cracks me up. The movie we went into was in Vietnamese. They were speaking Vietnamese, but it had Korean subtitles. So Kim and I were sitting there, right?
Mhm.
And he's telling me what they're saying. He's telling me, well, this happened, and they were just jumping around and doing all kinds of stuff. I had more fun listening to him tell me what was going on than what was really going on in the theater. So we went ahead and went out of there, and we went to this one bar to have a couple beers, and it was country and western. And my dad always made me listen to country and western music, so, you know, when your dad wants you to listen to it, you want to listen to rock and roll.
Mhm.
So I told Kim, I says, and these other guys, I says, let's get out of here. Let's go to this other place where they got some Elvis or maybe even the Beatles. We went out, walked across the street, sat down, and were just about ready to order a drink. We heard a loud explosion. A kid with a satchel charger went in. I mean, if we'd have stuck around another 5-6 minutes, we'd have been
Mhm.
either killed or wounded or something like that, because he pretty much blew that place up. Somewhere in my archives, I got a picture, because I had to take a picture of that.
Mhm.
I just could not believe it. For a while, I told Kim, I says, I don't think I want to go to the movies with you anymore.
Mhm.
And I think we better be watching where we go drinking.
Sounds like you had a little guardian angel a couple times there.
Well, you know what you find out after you've been over there? You come to the conclusion, and I told my dad this, and he goes, when I rode home, I said, Pop, I says, I've come to the conclusion, when it's my time to go, I'm going to go.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it don't make any difference whether I'm in Saigon, Quinyon, Cameron Bay, or Peoria, or Creeper, Illinois. I'm going to go.
Mhm.
Look at me now. I'm 68 years old. I'm still here. And I get to talk to beautiful women. And it's not my time to go. So, what else?
Uh, That you said you wrote home to your dad. Is that how you stayed in contact with them through letters? Were you able to?
For a little bit I did, but you know what? When they got you working, when we'd move the base, sometimes
Mhm.
we'd work maybe, we might work 24 hours straight.
That's what I was going to ask you too. Your schedule. Did you have a
No,
set schedule that was?
yeah. And then, you know, you get to, it's like, even now, I bet you guys can admit to the fact that you say, well, I'm going to write somebody a letter, or I'm going to get a hold of somebody. Next thing you know, a month went by and you haven't done it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's pretty much what happened
Guilty of
there.
that, yeah.
Of course, when I did get in contact, I had bought these recorders, you know, these little cassette recorders.
Mhm.
He had one, there were two just alike, and I'd send him cassettes, me talking on it and stuff like that, send them home.
Good idea.
Yeah, well, it was his idea.
Did you receive any awards or citations or anything?
Well, let's see.
Medals?
Nah, I got from the unit, they gave me this plaque for doing a good job.
Just a good conduct? Did you
Yeah,
get
for doing a good job. But here's the thing. I'm a pretty honest person. I got to tell you the truth. This first sergeant I had, he's at Hall. I've been in the Army, in this man's Army for almost 18 years. And he says, I've never seen anybody like you. I said, why is that? He says, you know why. He says, you're a good worker. You get the job done. He says, but you've been arrested by the MPs. That's military police.
Uh-huh.
The SPs, the Shore Patrol. The APs, the Air Police, and the ARVNs. And them ARVNs, when they arrested me, They didn't play it. Remember that Connex I was telling you about?
Yeah.
They had a little jail, and they hooked me with one arm there, and where I ate, I defecated, and everything else was right there where I was at for 2 days. And when that sergeant got me, I was a good boy for a long time. See, whenever I'd get a chance, whenever I get a chance to get out and have a good time, I'd have a good time.
That's right. What were you arrested for? Do you mind me asking?
Oh, let's see. The APs, air police is when we was going there to get oxygen, and had this Vietnamese guy on a motorcycle, that one of those little small motorcycles. He kept whipping around and stuff, and he wouldn't get out of the way, and I was riding shotgun. So I told this, when I got alongside of him, I threw a beer can at him, and he went off the road. So we got there and we're on line, you know, and the 2 Vietnamese were with me. He comes up and he starts yelling and stuff, you know. I says, yeah, whatever. He goes up to the guard post where they're checking you in. Oh, Hall, you're in trouble. You're big trouble, big trouble. I says, oh, what? Vietnamese CIA. Vietnamese CIA. I said, yeah, right. You know what? He was Vietnamese CIA. So they arrested me. They arrested me. And if I'd have just been like an E6 or above, but I was an E5 at the time, believe it, in spite of all the trouble I got into, I still went up to an E5. But I'm getting off the subject. So they arrested me, and when they put me in this room, and I looked around, and I'm just laughing my butt off, because the room they put me in was the room they kept all their ammo and their guns in. And they didn't even lock the door. They just said, sit in here. We're going to call your company up, and they're going to have somebody come and get you. So when my first sergeant showed up, he's all right, Hall, with this other guy. He says, tell me what happened. Tell me the truth. Don't lie to me. So I told him exactly what happened. He goes, okay, fine. You told me the truth. You're all good. Now, when you talk to the CO, this is what you're going to tell him. You were driving along, you were doing your job, sergeant, as the, not the driver, but the shotgun. And you were drinking a Pepsi. It wasn't a beer. And you threw the can out, did not knowing that but yeah, I said, I deliberately get him off the road. I was mad at him. He goes, you just tossed it out, not knowing that it was there. Okay. A few weeks later, got called in. The sergeant, now like you're the officer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant's sitting right behind him. Officer, I'm standing there. He says, tell me what happened. So I started telling him what happened. He's going, because I guess I was going to get him in trouble too by what happened, because of what happened to me. Because so I told him the story that I was supposed to tell. And that officer looked at me, the same look you got on your face. Yeah, right. But he says, okay, that's what we're going to put it down for. That was the APs. The shore police, that was when I was in Cameron Bay. Cameron Bay had been put off limits, and me and a buddy of mine by the name of Campbell, we had went down to one of those houses, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happened that it was in the Navy's area to patrol. And it wasn't even Campbell and I. This other guy that we didn't even know started making a bunch of noise and stuff and yelling and stuff. And these gals called for help, and the shore police showed up. And the guy that was causing all the trouble, he got away. But me and Campbell got arrested. So we told him, he says, we weren't the ones calling, but
You weren't supposed to be there.
that's right. It wasn't supposed to be there. And they called up company, and man, this one sergeant, now that sergeant in Cameron Bay, he was about this much bigger than I am. I wasn't as big as I am now. This much bigger than I am. About 6. He could have played a lineman for the Chicago Bears easily. Took out people. He showed up, wouldn't know what happened, and I told him, it's okay, he says. He took care of it, but it was still on my record.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I did with that record?
What?
Well, before I left, you had to pack all your gear up and all that stuff, check it out, and you had to take your records with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the company clerk, his name was, last name was Fink. He was from California. He told me, he says, Gary, he says, he said, I've looked at your records. He says, it's a good thing you extended over here so you had less than 5 months and got out early. He says, because they'd probably put you in jail with this record you got, all these arrests and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I says, yeah. He says, but don't worry. This is your file, and this is the file you're going to take home with you. So he took everything out and covered it all up. They just put a bunch of other stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we took my file and we burned it.
And so then you headed back home?
With file? Yeah, with that
Yeah.
file, yes, I did. I went back home, and
Was it hard to adjust going back home or anything? Or
You know-
were probably looking forward to
you
going
know,
back home?
it was because I went back to my parents' house. Oh, got another story to tell you. We got back in Seattle, Washington, and we had to have a physical before we left out, and we had to have our dress greens on before we left.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we were getting out of the service, most of us, they told us, they says, now you're going to have to walk from the bus to the plane. There's going to be some people out there, and they're not going to be very happy with you because you're Vietnam veterans.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they're just yelling at all kinds of veterans, whether you've been to Vietnam or not. I went, okay. There was people spitting at us and throwing stuff at us and cussing us out. I thought to myself, I never shot any babies. In fact, I was a medical supply. I probably, because of me being a medical supply, because we had people would, civilian doctors would come in and get supplies from us too.
Mm-hmm.
So we would get on the plane, flew from there to Chicago, from Chicago to Peoria. Now this was in 69, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The Peoria airport was a lot smaller than what it is right now. So I got there, and this is long before cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
And I called up, got to a payphone, and called my mom's house. I called my dad and mom's house. My dad was working. My brother Howard, he had the car, and he was working for Shire's Dairy. And my mom says, well, I tell you, she says, your dad's at work. And she says, when Howard gets off work, we'll come and get you. He'll be off work in a little bit. I said, okay. I'm at the Peoria airport. They showed up to get me. I went in. What's a kid that's working on 20 years old going to do that just got out of the Army?
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't had a passport ribbon beer in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go to the bar to see if he can get one.
Right.
21, you had to be 21 to get beer.
Mhm.
So I walked in there with my uniform on, and I was all ready to show them my military ID, see if I could,
Mhm.
bluff my way into getting a beer, The bartender goes, no, I reached for my pocket. He goes, no. He says, I don't need that. I said, you don't need my ID? He says, I don't need your money. Now, this is Peoria, Illinois.
Mhm.
I started I drank that beer, and he said, tell me what happened. By the time my brother got there, he knew exactly where to go find me when I wasn't where I was supposed to be.
Mhm.
I was there in the bar, drinking beer. I think I was on my 6th beer when he showed up, and I was on my 6th story.
Mhm.
All I had to do was just tell the story, and they'd buy me a beer.
So a little bit different how you were treated in
Oh,
Peoria
yeah.
than out.
I keep telling everybody, I says, Peoria, Illinois, was, there's a few people that was against the war and all that stuff, and there still is war protesters out there and everything. But as far as the guys, the military guys that was in there, I was drafted. I didn't say, hey, I want to go shoot some people, or I want to go do this. I want to go to Vietnam. I did what I was supposed to do.
Right.
So, and I got some, that Past Blue Ribbon beer never tasted so good. Okay, what else?
I don't know. Do you have anything else that you specifically want to say about
Oh, about war?
war, your time in Vietnam? Just you came back. Did you marry and have a family? Did you?
Oh, let's see here. I came back, had me a job at Caterpillar, got me a new car, partied around, got married the first time, lasted about 7 years, got divorced, got married the second time, that lasted about 12 years. This third one, though, it's going to last.
Third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm.
All right.
Besides that, well, and then I got a couple. The second wife, I got Chelsea and I got Ilea. Chelsea's 34, and Ilea's, let's see, 20. She's gonna be 28.
2 daughters.
Yeah. Both of them got their college educations. I'm sad to say that with a college education, they $10, $15 an hour jobs.
Mhm.
It's really bad. When I retired from Caterpillar with 40 years, I was making almost $28 an hour. I make more. I make more on my retirement and my Social Security put together than what my daughters do, and they get college educations.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm a woman's advocate.
You're one.
I don't think women are getting paid what they should get paid for. If you're a woman and you're doing the same job as a man's doing, you should get the same pay.
Thank you.
I don't care what the job is. Okay?
Okay.
That has nothing to do with this subject.
That's fine. I just, I guess we'll wrap it up here. I don't know unless you had something, like I said, anything else to add or.
I want to tell you this right now. Us going to other countries has done nothing but upset them, make them mad. Imagine, what do you live in Springfield?
I work in Springfield.
Okay, let's just say you live in Springfield, right?
Mhm.
And you live in the town of Springfield. And you got a few problems going on, right? And somebody from another town says, or another group says, we're going to come in and we're going to straighten all your problems out for you. And they straighten all, and and you didn't ask them to come in there. It's your problems. Then they show up and they get it all straightened out. But in the process, because of what they did, they messed up your town, and they messed up everything. And they're proud because they took care of something that you didn't even ask them to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was none of their business to come over here because it was your problem. It was your religious sect fighting another religious sect. Or, well, that's what it is. Religion has been the downfall of this world. People fighting because of religious beliefs. And that's what's going on over there in these Arabic countries. They got all these religious sects.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that if somebody asks you to help them out, say, okay, I'm going to go help you out. I'm going to show you what you need to do. But I'm not going to fight your war for you. You're going to have to fight it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be putting our guys fighting over there, because look what happened in all these different skirmishes we've gotten into. All we've done is just upset, make people mad, because we've got into their business trying to straighten out their problems. And most of them didn't even want us there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on things.
That's your take. Okay.
That and the fact that women aren't getting paid what they should get paid.
Jill, do you have any questions for him?
Nope, okay.
I guess we will conclude the interview then, okay?
Okay.
But I would like to say thank you for your service.
Oh,
And
well, thank
you.
you.
For sitting down with me today, okay? I
It was a
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Thank you.